That is what we are talking about, Uguti. Can our really radio station capture the essence of diversity to promote social cohesion? Because siyabona ukuthi there's so much division amongst our community. So now what is the role of radio station to really bridge the gap of discrimination and on? So I'm going to go now to Ms. Jacinta Ngobese. Ms. Jacinta Ngobese, what are some of the challenges that you've seen on radio that have really compromised the diversity in communities? It could be something that you have experienced before, maybe while you were aspiring to be a radio presenter, or maybe something that you've seen along the lines whereby Ububano would know. This is really now promoting segregation amongst the radio.
Sanbonan. I think for me, as classic causes, so that we don't end up falling in the same trap over and over again, because there's only so much that radio and radio stations can do when it comes to social cohesion. For example, community radio. I worked for Vibe. I've worked for Inanda FM as well before I worked for Ikagas. So with radio, each one of us has a license condition, which means license, we are limited to doing certain things. We are allowed to do certain things, even in terms of language. There's a certain percentage that a radio station can broadcast in. There's another certain percentage that a radio station can't broadcast in. Let's take a community radio, for example. If we're talking Vibe FM cannot have the expectation of reaching to abantu baseNewlands or a Phoenix. Inanda, it's the same thing. It'll reach the community that is within Inanda. Vibe, it's the community that is within Kwamash, according to the license. I'm not sure if it's Inc. or if it's Inanda alone or Mash. It's just North. So it's Greater North. So in terms of segregation that the country has, that's not the responsibility that a radio station can take upon itself, because if North has only black people, for example, because I know Mashu has like 1% Indian population, and the rest is like 3% colored community and 90-something percentage of Abantu. So if you understand, because you need to understand who you're talking to. I can't cater for a 1%, whereas kukhona 90% that is expected to be listening to the radio station. That's like saying to Ukhozi, must accommodate umlaleli we Lotus. Lotus FM has their own target market, which is ideally going to be an Indian person who's listening to Bhangra music or whatever the case might be. Umlalelo Ukhozi would be a typical Zulu person who listens to Maskandi music, and the expectation therefore cannot be the same. The rules cannot be the same. So for us on radio, I think there's only so much that you can do in terms of social cohesion. Why do I say that? Because for us, we're a commercial radio station. Massive commercial radio station, we've got a certain listener that we have in mind, and that listener is our target market. But we know who most of our listeners are. We know who most of the people are who are listening to us are. That's like saying if you want to create social cohesion and you're listening to our radio station, you don't have a white person in mind. You don't have an Indian person in mind, you have a black person. So how then do I preach social cohesion to just one group of people, whereas I'm leaving out the whites and the Indians? Because ideally the idea of social cohesion should be a United Stations thing, which is why we did something called KZN Unite. Now with KZN Unite, it was a combination of Vuma FM, Gagasi, Lotus FM, and East Coast Radio. So that's how you can reach ama groups angafani, by uniting radio stations, because the mandates ayifani, the listeners are not the same, and the markets is not the same. Because remember, with listeners, black people are of majority, which means it's Tina who lean towards the so-called white radio stations. Itina futhi will lean towards the so-called Indian radio stations, but on our side, very few would hop on to listening to Ukhozi or listen to Ivum. So it's only through things like KZN Unite where radio stations can come together and have a voice about issues that have to do with social cohesion and so forth. So I think for me the challenge is the system as a whole. It can't be just about radio stations themselves. That makes sense.